I did for you, my friend. I know that.
Welcome back. Well, in an era where digital economies and industrial clusters and homes, more importantly, are powered by electricity, when things go off and everybody's in the dark for hours or for days, and you get an announcement from the power distributors that there's a problem with their line, something has gone off, and we apologize. Those apologies come too often, Yomi, I must say.
Okay, that's if they come. That's if they come.
And they say there's a national grid collapse.
Yes,
what does that mean?
The national grid collapse.
Collapse.
Okay, what's happening? Why? We've heard it. I can't even count the number of times we've heard that.
Yes, and twice in January.
And in 2026 already. So how do we fix this?
Yes.
How do we ensure that we have steady power supply? Because it affects businesses, homes, just about everything that we do. And in terms of growing the economy, you can't have an epileptic power supply and think that the economy will grow.
And at some points we've heard that, oh, the problem was that there was not enough funding for power.
We'll get to know all of that. So.
And now that there is, I wonder what's happening. So joining us today, we have a power sector analyst, Abubakar Umar. He joins us in the studio. We also have someone else, but we're just going to Professor Yemi. Okay, yes, but I will stick with you for now. What's happening? Let me put it that way, to our power sector.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me. Good morning once again. So the issue of grid collapse has been a very long issue. I believe we have been discussing it since last 2 years and then up to now. But I will say this year we are just up to a very bad start. When you look at the start in 2024, we had a series of grid collapse, I think up to 12 or so. But in last year, I believe that we do not have collapse in Q1, Q2, Q3, even Q4. It's only recently in December that we had challenges of gas supply, which we had that some vandalism has happened with the ELPS pipeline gas network with NMPC line in December. That's when we had issues around supply. Up until recently, I would say last year is a good year because we have recorded almost 0 collapse. But starting this year, we almost have 2 partial or full system collapse this year. And the issue about grid collapse is that it's an engineering problem that comes, that was exacerbated maybe by commercial issues, which means that a direct example will be that when the electricity in your house is stripped, you know, something happens, maybe when you connect electricity when you connect something bad and then, you know, something trip and your light goes off in your house. So you have to go and check what happens and then you fix it. So that's akin to the national grid issue. It's a case of wires or some kind of problem that is occurring somewhere, which is significant enough to affect the entire system because the system has to protect itself. So the safety is the reason why the entire system will shut down and then they will now restart the issue. So it's a case of there should be enough funding to be able to provide good equipment which can withstand, you know, for a very period of time without that collapse happening. So the issue is that you are having lack of funding to fix the areas that is creating those kind of collapse. And it can happen anywhere because, you know, one of the issues on the sector is aging equipment. Some of the infrastructures have been there for long. There is no replacement on that. And everybody will see that, yeah, of course, it's about money. And then a lot of people will say, why is it not happening elsewhere? So it's not happening somewhere in terms of, you know, engineering problem. That is, a grid is not collapsing elsewhere. And elsewhere also you realize that they have reasonable funding. The power that is dispatched has been paid for in full. So, but unlike the case here in Nigeria. So that lack of, you know, money, funding, it's what is making, you know, the entire system not to have recent equipment that will allow us to have that steady supply over a long period of time. So these are some of the issues we are having. But I will say from last year, the way the system has been is a bit more, you know, I will say advanced improvement compared to this year. And I believe that
what was done differently that cause this advance and improvement that you said?
So what I may say differently is probably I will only trace back to the implementation of the recent Electricity Act, and there have been some changes with the TCN. The Electricity Act of 2023, particularly Section 15, has tried to separate the work of the TCN, which is the grid owner and controller. They bifurcate them into two. Grid owner is now different from who controls the grid. So, and then from that angle, you have a person someone which is the NICE, or Nigeria Independent System Operator. They are the people, controlling the grid. So, and in that aspect, they will be able to look at it independently where there are issues. They try to, improve on those areas and ask the relevant stakeholders to ensure that any areas that may lead to collapse here and there has been, improved. So there are a lot of there are investment in some isolated, different areas, and then the stakeholders are also coming together to try and avoid that from happening. So I will say they have done a lot of background work, which has worked, and then availability of gas supply is also very critical, which is something they have been working across the interagency to ensure that they have a very good system. So what they have done last year really yielded a very reasonable result. But this year is too early to say what happened. Sometimes you can have a series of consistent good policy, and then if something happens, if you have a mistake somewhere, then definitely you are going to have, it's going to wind back all the gains that you have gained for a very long period of time.
If you compare the models that we use in Nigeria, infrastructure model for electricity, with other countries, would you say we are, at par, or maybe taking it too far at par? We are somewhere close to where we should be.
Yeah, so it will be a tough one. When you compare us with another country, there are areas where we are good and there are areas where we are lacking. But when you look at it as a whole, most time you find out that the issues will come from the government, right? There are areas where the government is supposed to do one thing, and then the customers also supposed to respond. It's a symbiotic or reciprocal arrangement, whereby if the government provide the needed power, then you as a person also supposed to, pay for that power. But then the sector is in a way that, there is no meter for customers. They will not agree to pay, and the companies are also saying that you have to pay, so all these sort of things, which is not happening in other places. So of course you are not going to have the same result. So our issue, I will say, is peculiar, and it has been long for a very long period of time. It's very unusual. But whatever you look at it, I try to make the issues to be a governance issue, right? If the governance set the tone of what they want to do, I believe that they can tweak anything and make it happen.
Right, thank you. I think we have a senior advocate of Nigeria, professor of energy and electricity law, Yemi joining us now on the program. Thank you for joining us. He joins us virtually. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and good morning. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Right, and you have just joined at the right time, and we've been having this discussion about the national grid and the persistent collapse. Of course, we've already said that a majority of last year we really didn't have much incidences, concerning it. But for twice this year already, we've had two in this January. He's talked a lot about the infrastructure, and of course, Yomitu has alluded to that, the infrastructure of the national grid and the form in which it is in this 21st century. The current form in which it is, can the grid be modernized in its current centralized configuration? Modular islanding or a more realistic technical fix can be given to it so that we don't have this consistent collapse due to lack of gas or what have you. That's always the excuse that's given to it.
Thank you. Several years ago, we pushed the narrative that we can't be relying on a federated grid in the 21st century because it's not realistic, it's not the way the world is going. Quite frankly, the world is actually going off grid. The world is going of the upgrade. So the structure of energy consumption of regime is such that people prefer disaggregated grid, upgrade, parties, and mini grids, if at all grid. So we said we can't be talking of infiltrated grid in the 21st century. Then what are the options? Then the federal government felt they needed to engage consultants. There was no problem with that. That was what led to the attempt of Manitoba Hydro and the transmission service contract they had years ago. But because that agreement was killed against the Canadian and the Nigerian interests, we thought the, 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 the agreement probably would suffer a natural death. And that happened. So Manitoba Hydro didn't achieve much. Then, more than almost a decade ago, the Siemens model came. Then we had to get Siemens to rework the national grid, enhance it, and of course, infuse a lot of technological advancements in the national grid. Of course, I wasn't as optimistic because I knew certain challenges they might face and they're still facing. And then the miracle didn't come. And then we must acknowledge the fact that the government, of course, took the bull by the horns as soon as this current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came on board. He visited Germany, saw the concept of the German Chancellor, and of course engaged the Siemens team because it's a German-based company on the need to accelerate the grid transformation. And I said, even in your studio, that I wasn't as optimistic because I knew, even despite the spirited effort of Mr. President, Siemens will still not be a success story. It's still not a success story a decade after. Why are we having all those challenges? We're having those challenges because we needed to have done a lot of things differently. Of course, the grid infrastructure is very weak. We have a lot of needless human involvement that ought to have been curtailed. We have cases of vandalism happening up north and northeast, northwest, and even at the national conference or national power summit we went for the National Council on Power. These concerns were voiced that some criminal elements will go pack away expensive high tension cables on the transmission infrastructure. And to fix those things are very expensive. So government, of course, has faced that challenge. And if you look at the power sector as a chain, because it's not to be looked at as an isolated structure. It's a chain. The weakest end is the distribution. So let's look at the consumer. The consumers are still faced with a lot of challenges. We are still talking of meter bypass, inadequacy of meters, prepaid meters. Federal government says meters should be free. The operators, the players said, oh, they have to pay the total. We may have a lot of intervention challenges in that regard. World Bank assisted meter project, map from company. We have all kinds of inconsistencies in terms of our regime, meter regime, and customers are still not happy. So let's take that to the level of the discourse. The discourse are still challenged. They are challenged because of the structure they not on ground and the debt overhang that has refused to go in the power sector. So there's a challenge, a restraint as to the extent to which the discourse will go. They are incapacitated financially. 90% of them are technically insolvent. One even just got acquired by a new player. Some majority of them are under receivership for one form of receiver money, that kind of thing. So they think struggling with effective recovery, cost recovery, cost effective tariff, like Nigerians are not happy. A whole lot of this, even at the level of the disco. So the discourse are challenged. Then let's look at the GENCOs. Of course, GENCO, of course, is seriously challenged because they've not been able to pay adequately for the gas, and they're exposed to the tune of 4 trillion. Arguably, I disagree with the figure, arguably. So they are not really encouraged to keep generating those megawatts. So the industry is not looking. And the government on the part of the government now before we go to regulation. Government is also challenged. Last year, it was reported by NERC that government has spent 2 trillion by way of structured subsidy in the power sector. If you put 2 trillion in subsidy in 1 year, you put 4 trillion in debt to the disco, to the gencos. I look at other challenges, inappropriate pricing of gas, because gas is a completely internationally complicated product. You're not going to expect gas producers to produce those gas and sell at a loss. So they would rather sell it at international rate, rate, and make a lot of money, as against complying with their domestic gas obligation to give gas to the gencos to supply electricity at a concession rate. The business people don't do that. So we have that challenge. And then the regulatory environment is also weak. So what do we have? The way we have is to start a gradual backing up from the federated grid. And the federating states are not even doing what they ought to do. 2 years down the line, after the new regime under the Electricity Act 2023, we've not seen serious activities on the part of the state. The subnationals have not done sufficiently well. A few have started to take steps until we back up from the federated grid. And states now begin to deploy their competitive advantages, then we'll free up the tension and the stress and the burden on the national grid. We're not going to get anywhere. And that's why in homes and offices, Nigerians are the ones procuring transformers. Communities are the ones contributing money to buy electric poles. Nigerians are the ones paying for meters, which these are assets of the discourse. And we have a lot of challenges in the sector that, of course, gradually we'll deal with them. And the boss should stop at the level of the managers, actually. The policy implementers, we need to do the needful, put their feet down, and knock when they need to knock. I think we need an aggressive regime. Let me liken the challenges we're having in the power sector to the Solido model. As a young professional, I was fascinated by the vision of the then Dr. Professor Solido as his economic advisor, later CBN governor. He looked at the future of the Nigerian banking system and said, there's no picture here. The banks are collapsing. We have mushroom banks owned by an individual and his family, and you don't have loans to questionable personalities. Solido now said Nigerian banks are where they needed to capitalize to the tune of 25 billion naira then. It seems a lot of money. Some banks collapsed, some merged, some went under. Today, with the foresight, commendable foresight of now Governor Solido, President, the CBN governor, Nigerian banks capitalized to the tune of 25 billion naira. 2 years after, Nigerian banks are now buying up banks in other African countries. The Nigerian banks are now competing in the international space. Nigerian banks are now in London, they are in the US, they are everywhere. Now, banks are now declaring trillion naira profit after tax. And Nigerian banks now are now saying, the new regulators now say, oh, Nigerian banks, you still need to further capitalize to the tune of 200 billion. Banks that struggle with 25 billion. That was foresight. That was management. That was governance. That stimulated growth in the Nigerian financial sector, and we are happier for it as a nation. The same thing ought to happen in the power sector. It takes the foresight of a good manager to chart. President is not going to sit on the driver's side in every sector. He's going to put a Nigerian there to drive things and make life better for us. We have the law, unless and until we break lightning and purpose into the electricity law and regulatory structure. Honestly, we're not going to be there. We'll keep taking 2 steps forward and maybe 3 or 4 backwards. Let me pause for now.
And I'm sure every Nigerian is looking forward to a better power supply in the country. You mentioned something while you were talking about consumers having to buy the poles, having to buy the wires, having to buy the transformers. We are going to come back to that, because what is in it for these communities who buy all of these things? But let me come to the studio, Mr. Umar. He had mentioned that one of the things that we can do to have steady power supply is for us to step away from this federated grid. Do you think many states would be ready or have the capacity? I know Enugu, I think, is trying to do something in that line. Abia, I think Lagos State also has something in that line. Would you say states should step up to this?
So you know, the issue is, you call the issue at a very high level. You know, when we talk about decentralizing or everybody's managing its grid, a lot of people understand different compared to what the industry professional understand. Now there is something, the grid is connected. It's providing electricity to the entire country. So what the electricity law has done is that to allow those states to regulate electricity at their own respective location, irrespective of where you are. But the law did not try to say, you know, the existing grid should be bifurcated or to be, you know, decentralized for each state. It means that Bayelsa State can still be generating electricity while maybe Kano State will, you know, be using the power generated there. So what maybe Bayelsa and other state will do is just to manage the activities of the electricity within that state around distribution. But the law also allows them, if you have the capacity to bring additional generation within your state, you can be able to do that. But the issue is that the main grid that is supplying the entire country, which is what we currently use, I believe that a lot of people share sentiment regarding that it's not supposed to be, you know, decentralized. It means that you better have one source of supply that is providing energy to all people. Reason being is that it gives you economies of scale. One, it makes the price reasonably affordable to people, and then it ensures security of supply. What it means is that when you have electricity that is being generated in the country and being shared, you will not have challenge. If one state is not generating or they have challenge, they can redirect that energy to another person. But when you decide to say you want to make the grid to be independent of each state, you are going to have challenge in the sense that what happens if your system has crashed? It means that nobody will be able to supply you electricity until you have fixed that. So one of the disadvantages of the current system we have is the grid collapse issue that we are now discussing, which is something that I believe it's avoidable, and that's what they are working on. But when you separate the grid, into each and every state, the number one challenge you will have is the money, is the price. The pricing is the major thing. And in as much as people want reliable electricity will not go without affordable pricing. But
I'm sure many Nigerians want to, yes, pay for what they get.
Yes.
And if you give them electricity
and get what they pay for,
yes. If you give them electricity constant, they don't want to go and buy petrol, or go and expend so much on solar, because not everyone would have the capacity to do that. Even though we'll come to the issue of whether we cannot, as a nation, also try to rely on alternative power supply.
So the issue is that we have to go all in together, or we fall apart. You know, there's a saying, they say, united we stand, and divided we fall. So if you divide, like say, everybody is now having his own solar, everybody has his own diesel generator, but when you compare the cost of your solar and diesel, you realize that the cost is a bit high compared to electricity. And the reason why people are going for that solar is not because they like the solar, it's because of reliability. To some people, of course, they just want reliable power. They don't actually mind the price, but that's a very bad issue. Sometimes, you know, people will say they want reliable power. So when the reliable power comes at a high cost, they tend to take a step back and decide to say that they don't want. We have seen the case of this band A. It's at 200. A lot of people, you know, are complaining that they can't afford it.
Some people will tell you even under band A,
it's
they
cheaper.
Still don't have the power.
Don't have the power. So thank you. So another example I want to give is that there are a lot of estates in this Lagos that are having different arrangement with the grid, whereby they have constant power. If the grid is off, their supplier will, you know, use alternative generator to provide them. But oftentimes, tariff used to go up to 400 per kilowatt hour. So that is Lagos in a place whereby there is high economic activities compared to other places. So if really it can go to 400 and a lot of people will, reject that arrangement and say, no, it's too high, then that's the challenge. And then the issue of that solar, is that, and this diesel, it's the people that can afford the current band A pricing that are moving to that solar, which means it's your biggest customers, the people with the big pocket. They are the one moving away from the grid, allowing those people that do not have any alternative. A lot of people now in Nigerian homes that are without solar is because they can't afford the solar. That is why they are left with no option, than to use the grid. And that means if we did not solve the grid issue and get power, we may end up in a society whereby there are people with electricity because they can afford, and then there are people without electricity because they cannot afford.
Right.
So
Right.
that's another thing.
Professor, if we can come back to you, earlier we talked about, shortly before you joined, we talked about, comparisons between Nigeria and other countries and how we operate central supply of power, or decentralized supply of power, if we can put it that way. What do you think Nigeria should be doing better? We know that we've had this infrastructure that we call national grid for decades, and that's what we've been improving upon. And every time something happens, they replace parts, they do this, they do that. But is there no better way to operate a national grid than the structure that we have on ground, Prof?
Thank you. I did not take an authority check date. Quite frankly, for more than 50 years, you studio the as said, chamber, that's it. Back to the future. Ourselves. Gradually, we were able to push the narrative up on this level, where we have a decentralized structure. And that is the way to go. And the things are how most of the things we expected. I even mentioned that we're going to have a decentralized regime, because that was what the old constitution said, unamended, actually decentralized our sector. Or the old electric power reform has centralized it. And I said that was wrong. That was a mismatch, contravening the constitution. Why to point it out that states will start to have something like Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission, Ogun State Electricity Regulatory Commission. These are speculations. Kano State Electricity Regulatory Commission. These are speculations of about 15 years. They are up there in your YouTube and elsewhere. So it's something. And that is certainly a situation in which, if you don't have electricity in Lagos, for instance, the people living in Bash will be in darkness is antithetical. It doesn't make sense in any jurisdiction. If there's no electricity in your then Ogun should be in darkness. States should develop based on that competitive advantage. That's the model as well. If there's no in New York, it shouldn't affect Washington. If there's no light in Ontario, Quebec may be running on 24 hours. The progress or success of one state should not stall the other. States should develop at their own pace. States should develop based on the competence, sincerity, the governance pattern of the governor in charge. So if you want your state to develop, you are going to make your state bankable to attract foreign investors in the power sector. If your state honors its construction firm, if to procure land in your state is transparent and easy, if to do business in your state is easy, there are no underhand, undercourt dealings in your state. If your state is strong, competently, effectively, sincerely, invest against in the power that's in another sector of your state. States should develop at their own. States should develop based on their competitive advantage in the power, energy, rail, other aspects of the state. So the progress of one state should not stop the other. That's the essence of federation. That said, a situation in which we have a centrality, happens, the one we had recently was because of the lingering effect in Gombe, on one of the feders in Gombe. The entire country got shut down. That was something that affected Gombe and affected the whole country. That was something that affected them in Niger, in Gombe, in Bauchi, in Bayelsa, in Rivers. No modern day development. So we can't definitely continue with that because grid will continue to collapse. Sometimes in your studio, we will sit and speculate grids will collapse 20 times. We will have 19 or 21. It got to a level I was almost called prophet of doom because we are predicting the frequency of grid collapses with almost mathematical accuracy. This year, I'm worried that from the 2023 with the coming on board of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the signing of the Electricity Act, we started seeing a gradual decline. And the decline continued up until last year, even my brother then the student mentioned it. But in January, just last 2 days in December, January, we had 3 collapses. It means if you were having 2, 3 collapses per month, that's going to take us to the realm of 20, 30 collapses, great collapses. And I'm worried because I know the government is done in law to reduce the structure with the law and other steps taken. For instance, we've been able to explicate the function of Transmission Company of Nigeria from that of the system operator. That was why the Electricity Act provides for NISO, Nigerian Independent System Operator. That is the body in charge of load scheduling and transmission management and what have you. But with NISO, almost 2 years of NISO now, we haven't seen a major sharp departure. I know they are trying to find their feet and their bearings because it is a new body. But we can't go the way of this presidential definitely because what has since moved away from that. People now look at isolated grids, regional grids, mini grids, completely off grids, mobile grids, and technology is responding. 1. 2, we haven't sufficiently deployed technology for the purpose of grid management. And that was what the Manitoba people and the cement people are supposed to be pushing into our structure. For instance, right there in my office, the countries monitor their transmission infrastructure based on drones, using drones. And they deploy artificial intelligence to aid that monitoring. You will have, if something were to happen tomorrow, the national grid of the particular segment of the grid infrastructure, you will have seen a kind of beats. They call it early warning signs. That something going to happen in my. You quickly go and deal with it. You see early warning signs in Gobe, you deal with it. But again, we are just responding to collapses. If we collapse before we respond, it's not done. And because we need modern day technology to manage the grid, while stimulating gradual disembarkment from the dilapidated national grid. National grid is like petroleum pipelines laid several years ago. Any attempt to put petroleum product in a dilapidated weak pipeline, the pipeline bursts. The same thing with the national grid. We have generated more than the 4,005 thereabout that we keep managing our share. But we couldn't put those on the national grid because the capacity of Nigeria's national grid as we speak is weak. Not about additional megawatt that is generated. That's why we have from the IPPs standard and come national. So unless we now start to structure those new megawatt or through structured grid, state-based grid, regional grid, then we will have effectiveness. If we continue, whatever triggers negatively in any state will continue to affect the entirety of the country, and that's definitely not the way to go.
And I think Tola is agreeing with you. He sent in a message saying that he believes that the centralized system will work better, that we are doing it now with Benin and Togo. Same energy, same strategy can work for the states. Let's stop confusing uniformity with unity. And from Feyi Shetan is saying something about Benin Electricity Distribution Company. It says that they keep the residents of Ogwashuku town in Aniocha South local government area of Delta State on estimated bills for powers not consumed. So we contribute money for transformers, poles and wires, yet we still give estimated billing. You know, earlier I said that we're going to come back to the issue of buying electricity poles, wires, transformers, and I'm happy you are a lawyer in that field, and SAN for that matter. So tell us, as consumers, what is our rights when we buy the transformers, when we buy the poles, we buy the electricity wires? Is there something that protects us or gives us back, you know, from what we have contributed?
Definitely, we have laws that protect consumers. We have extensive laws. There are bundles of laws that protect consumers, particularly electricity rights. Yeah, there's a publication I did from electricity consumer rights, or right of electricity consumers. There's a body of law in that regard. But Nigerians are not significantly aware of their rights. You can't blame a discourse because business people know who they are. They will take undue advantage of the vulnerability of Nigerians or lack of information. But let me give you this example. I wasn't happy when the person did. That's why I always say each time I have the opportunity. A friend, knowing my position, called me. He said they had a problem. In the community, they had contributed money, about 20 million naira, to buy a transformer. After contributing to self-levy to get the transformer, they now needed to energize it. So they had to approach a disco. Transformers, poles, and others are assets of the discos naturally. Discos are the only entities confirmed with legal right to take electricity from one point to the other. That's their duty, that's their right. Nobody can do that because unless you have access to distribute, you can't take electricity from one point to point. That's why those assets will continue to be there. It is the responsibility of to supply metal, transformers, cables, transformer oil, and what have you. That's it. So this my friend said they approached a disco, and the disco said, yes, they appreciate the fact that they have to procure that transformer, but they cannot do anything on it because it's in the name of the community, and that unless the community transfer that transformer to them voluntarily, and they have to write to the I wish I saw. Saying we social community, this, we don't take this, this, for people not to insist on our right, it's not our home, we have. No, you understand? They give them a template.
So a disco, who is going to charge them for passing electricity into their...
So they had to write a letter to the disco, donating the transformer to the disco. After that, they now approve the disco. Now we don't want to pass us to I energize the transformer for us. That took months. And they now say, okay, before they can come and energize, they have to contribute 12 million naira. I was so upset. But I couldn't beg them to take support. I wanted to sue the particular disco because of the information we have. But you know, we have to keep this advocacy. If all is not well, that you have to buy food, and this goes to farm and better. So what this goes to go to subsidize electricity to the fossil trailer. This goes to also under remit to the gencos. And the cycle of nonsense.
So, Prof, are we're at the mercy of these distribution companies? So because we need electricity in our areas and if it's supposed to be their asset, as you have said, then they should provide it because they are going to charge us for that service. And now, I'm sure a lot of people watching, or some people watching in their areas would attest to this. You buy all of these things, and then it's time to repair it. They can't even repair it for you. You have to bring money, as you have said, bring money. What can we do as consumers? That's the part of it that I'm really interested in.
Honestly, we are not at the mercy of the discourse, if I must be honest with you. We are at the mercy of the regulators. We are at the mercy of the governance structure. We are at the mercy of those who ought to will the discourse in line. This discourse, as I said, they are financially constrained. Once you privatize, the job of government is to bring on board effective, competence-based, solid governance, independent governance, regulation. I just get the example of Solito. Continue to be my man forever, because what is happening in the banking sector? When I was a young lawyer, I was involved in a lot of mergers and consolidation of those things, and I saw things. And then people are talking now, nobody's giving the glory to Governor Soludo when he was still governor, when he made this Nigerian banks to become multi-trillionaires. The same thing ought to happen in this. It's a question of who is in charge. These codes are licensed entities. They are under a regulator. They are responsible to a regulator. All these things are not made. Nigerians have been stating the discourse are aware. The regulators are aware. The regulators are not said, and I will repeat it. I know the challenges the discourse are facing. And I've said, if you, I don't know when, I think about 14 years ago, Kimberly, Markware, and I think Sulaiman myself were in the studio. And I said repeatedly that unless we go for another round of reacquisition and financing in the power sector, we'll continue to struggle. Yeah. We are still struggling. Yeah. Because the discourse were not supposed to be, I mean, the kind of partners that are there in the discourse were not supposed to be inside. Those who initially got those entities were only able to raise money for purpose of acquiring those assets. We call it acquisition financing. When they acquired it, they quickly bought those assets. That's the money to take it further. That's why they have not been able to invest massively to be able to do all those things that Nigerians are doing for them in terms of being able to supply transformers, poles, cables, meters for people. Because they need to get on board more customers. And Nigerians are trying. That's why Nigerians will continue to cut corners. Cut corners because they also need to manage their own costs. That's why you continue to incident of meter bypass. If you continue to bypass, this will continue to be a problem in terms of their financial position. The system is multifaceted. And we are aware of this, and we've been talking about it for almost 2 decades now. The response level has been slow, but we never stop talking because Nigeria belongs to us.
Certainly, Prof. We'll never stop talking about it. If you can weigh in on some of this, I know you've been listening and nodding your head. What do you think about consumer rights when it comes to electricity consumption?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what Prof has said, and almost. This is one of the core areas that the new law is trying to address. Consumers are not supposed to buy their meters, repair transformers and other things. But, before this, the current structure, the existing structure before this new one, stretched the regulator, which is the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. They have to provide forum offices in every state of the country, whereby consumers go there if they have issues. But now, with the recent law, this is one of the key areas that a lot of people are looking forward to, because if maybe one disco in Lagos here did not provide you proper service, you are taking them to regulator from Lagos State in Lagos. So Lagos State might decide to have maybe 10 different forum offices for regulating, the electricity distribution companies. So if you buy transformer or if you report they did not do it, you take it to you take the disco to the office, which is a bit more closer compared to when you take issue to the national regulator, which is the NEC. But now Lagos State has its own regulator, different state, Enugu and all of other states. So it makes it easier. This law provides that avenue for customers to just, feel hard. And the people in that regulatory agency, they are people in that state. They already know the existing challenges and they will act more faster compared to when it is regulatory, the federal and the regulator. So this is one of the areas that I believe that the law will provide, a solution to that. And it just remains for the governors to ensure that such kind of mechanism is in place. But consumer protection is one of such areas that I believe is good. And another point that I had Prof make regarding the issue, like recent collapse that happened in Gombe. It started in Gombe based on the information provided by the NISO, and then the issue started in Gombe, and then suddenly in Ogun State, Lagos State, you do not have power, and one of the importance of the law is to allow state to also develop. But when we say that each and every state should develop at their own pace, it's more like it's a fiscal federalism issue, and then you tend to look at what of the other countries. Is it possible like that? You will see that in each and every country there is one or two states that have more economic power compared to other states, which is providing support to some other states. So I still believe that unless we have reached a level whereby we have stable power, that's when I think states should be able to take up their own 100% issues.
Okay. There's a message that is coming in from one of our viewers in Igbobo in Ikorodu here. When it comes to this electricity matter, a lot of Nigerians are interested. So the Ibelefun Morekete community, they say they have purchased a 500 kilowatt transformer. They bought the high tension poles and ready to be energized by Ikeja Electric Distribution Company. And they have not come.
Since October 2024.
Since October
2024, not 2025.
So I think, as Prof had said, the regulators, because I had said that these discos, that they are holding us to ransom. But he said the regulators, and I want to plead with the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission to please, this part of it, yes, we know we are grappling with trying to have stable power supply, but this part of it where residents or consumers have to buy transformers, poles, and all of that, please come out and tell us what our rights are, and let us know what the discos are entitled to, so that if we buy all of these things, we're able to say, okay, how do you now reimburse us? Because it is a business, whether you like it or not.
Not to cut you short, summarily two things. First is that the national regulator used a lot of campaign in the previous time. I saw it, they put it on TV, on media. They keep saying that consumers are not supposed to buy that particular thing. And secondly, most times with my experience, most people that buy transformers, cables and other things, they relate directly with the management of those discos. They write later. Sometimes they even have agreement on when the discos will be able to refund that amount, because that's a huge investment.
I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that.
So because you can imagine a community spending transformers and cable can take up to 50 million or more.
Yes.
So you can't just spend that money. So
and
most
even
of the community,
installation, that's the part of it. So you've bought all of this. For the disco to come and install it, you still have to pay.
So even if you paid, sometimes before they install it, you have to ensure there's a written agreement on how you recover your money. Either they will not bill the community or any other thing. Sometimes that negotiation is what is creating some fracas.
They will hold us to the jugular.
Well, we must thank
please come
to our rescue.
Come and tell us, and let all of the discos, dencos, the consumers know their rights. And where this stops and where this starts.
Yes, certainly. Right. We must thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of the show this morning and for discussing this this discussion that never ends, really, I must say. Abubakar Umar, power sector analyst, who was here with us in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us. And we had virtually Yemioke, senior Advocate of Nigeria was Professor Yemi Okeerili, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Professor of Energy and Electricity Law. Thank you so much for joining us on the program again today.
Thanks,
Yes, we'll be back in a moment, and this time we'll talk about security. To stay with us on Sunrise.